tonight.
Correct, for the, yeah,
Okay, there.
correct, yes, you were kind enough. Buddy, welcome. Welcome to folks that joined us for, not on the board, glad you're here.
Thank you. Thank you. There we go. Welcome. Good evening. I think there may be a few folks joining us virtually, so I'm just going to kind of keep a tab on that. But if you see anybody raising their hand on the screen, let me know so we can make sure we include everyone. Chris, hi. So we've got Chris, Quinn, Pat, Jane, Fred, myself. So we've got a quorum here with Pat. Let's start off with the consent agenda approval of the minutes from May. Did everyone have a chance to review the May minutes? Any comments on May minutes? Any feedback or is anyone like a motion to approve? Or
General question.
question, Pat? Yeah,
General question is,
on the minutes.
yeah, is there's a heck of a lot of stuff on these minutes, of course. Thanks to Kelly,
Which is great.
which is great. And
Hey, Morgan.
seems like things get brought up and then they just kind of disappear into the sunset. So I'm wondering if there's not some way that we can make a policy of trying to do follow-ups. You know, because people come in and give presentations and something, issues are brought up and then seems like nothing happens to them oftentimes. I thought.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, when I put out the draft agenda, if there's something else that you want to be on there as a follow-up or something that's specific from one of the committees, definitely bring it up and we can make sure that we follow up on that. But good comment, Pat. I have noticed the same thing where we kind of get some momentum, but it's good to make sure that we're following up. If it falls outside of the subcommittees, we should just make sure we're all keeping tabs.
I'll move that we approve the minutes and then these new guys over here have to turn their signs around. I just assumed it was on the list.
We're on both sides, yeah. So Pat moves to approve the minutes. Quinn seconds, all in favor? Great. Minutes approved. Okay, so we're going to move to persons not present on the agenda. We have about 3 to 5 minutes for this portion. Fred, feel free to come up to the lectern and share.
Podium. Okay. Yes. I don't know if many of you noticed this advertisement for bids for HVAC improvements and the wastewater treatment facility. I called and got the bid documents, and apparently what's going on is an increase in outside air to dry out the digester building better. That will increase the utility, the gas use there by, I would estimate, $10,000 a year with associated emissions and those social costs of carbon and all that. I know the city had an electrification study of some kind done, or HVAC inventory. I looked at that and I've got to say it did not seem very complete. I think you need to ask for a more complete electrification study of the buildings and really look into what whether alternatives were looked into for the wastewater treatment facility, like industrial dehumidification systems, which if you look online at their brochures are intended, usually they're used in large commercial swimming pools and stuff, but a similar environment. And instead of bringing outside air in, you dry the air out. And it's more of an electric strategy than a gas strategy. So going forward, it will have lower emissions. Whether or not it has lower operating costs depends on a lot of different moving parts. So I guess that just brings me to, all these things like this, and I noticed vehicle purchase requisitions for the city seem very ad hoc. And it just seems like there isn't a real plan within the city, and I almost feel like the city staff doesn't quite believe in the goals that the city has laid out, to the extent they're clear or not. The transportation or the EV Go plan, correct me on what that's really, is that what it's called?
Go EV City.
Go EV City. City memo, or I'm thinking is it an ordinance, or was it that was passed, includes some things like it says the social cost of carbon shall be used. Well, that's been pegged at $1, $50, $200, or the cost of removal right now, which is, $1,000 to $2,000, depending on how you get subsidized. So I think the city someone should look into providing that as some methodology that the city should use for these kind of things. I would actually turn that on its head and look at the cost of saved carbon from emissions reductions, electrification, efficiency, vehicle electrification, charger stations, to the extent you can predict how much they'll get used. That would be a kind of life cycle cost analysis, looking at, essentially scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, maybe trying not to go all the way back to the dawn of civilization, like some people try to do when they look at life cycle, they call life cycle analysis. I will send the name of a company in Boulder that did the Aspen High School electrification study, where they provided, their design includes a hybrid electrification system for the boiler, where when Holy Cross has cheaper and more renewable saturated times of electricity delivery, they will turn on the electric boilers or heat pumps instead of the gas boilers. They can't go 100%, and it would require some transformer the size of this room probably if they tried to do that. But these are guys I worked with and quit my company, started their own, and I think they do ESCO planning too. So they're real sharp guys. I'll send that to someone at the city. So there you go. Social cost of carbon.
I had a couple questions.
Yeah.
I was curious. I mean, I'd love to sit down with you, because we are, the resolution was just to kind of kickstart things on the Go EV City stuff. And then now we're trying to work into, how do we implement, or how do we make positive changes using that resolution as a kind of a guide. And so, we're working with Martine at CLEER, but it sounds like you're really knowledgeable in this stuff and have good ideas. So I'd be interested in chatting with you.
Okay.
If you have time.
Yeah. I'll send you my email address.
That'd be great.
Or I'll just say no, fwporter@gmail.com.
Hey, Fred.
Did I give you my name at the start? Fred Porter.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Fred.
Okay.
Are you busy at 12:30 tomorrow?
Tuesday?
Yeah.
I think I'm good.
All right.
I think I'm
La Fogata.
Oh, okay.
Fred, thanks for your comments.
Okay,
We'll take that into account. Appreciate it.
carry on.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, stick around and listen to some of the updates from CLEER and some of the other things.
Sure. Yeah, welcome to. Okay, thank you. And that's good. That's kind of good input too, as we're thinking about, we have our time in a little bit as we're thinking about work session items for the 2023-2024. So that's a good kind of kickoff to a variety of other things that we've been thinking about.
Oh, Actually,
let's-
I just asked one thing. 2023-24, what is the budget process timeline in Carbondale for? the next
Generally,
year?
yeah, generally that happens. Chris could kind of speak to that more, but generally that happens toward the end of the summer or early fall is when that's established. When those meetings happen to put that in place for the following fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's from our standpoint, that's why during the summer is the time when we're thinking about, strategically kind of what are our focuses and what are we going to be aiming for and thinking about as it ties into the Board of Trustee update and budget items.
Good, thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Fred. Great. Well, that's always helpful to have outside input on what we're thinking about and doing. Flora Plastics, do you all want to feel free to come up to the lectern and kind of share about what you're up to? And sure, feel free to wherever is comfortable for you. It doesn't have to be as formal. And yeah, it would be great to hear. You all had reached out to me and said you'd like to share something at the e-board meeting. It would be great to hear more about what you're up to and also how we can provide feedback in terms of what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Natalie and this is Adam. And in 2020, we developed a bioplastic using microalgae and some other plasticizers, organic plasticizers. And since we developed this bioplastic, we've been thinking like, what can we actually make with this material? And we recently started developing interested in starting to manufacture alternative building materials. And so we're looking at an alternative right now to vinyl. And as you guys are all aware, vinyl is, made from fossil fuels. So we would be replacing the fossil fuel with our microalgae plastic. And I think, and this is the first time we're really started to talk about it. So we're just kind of, getting our feelers out there and seeing, is this something that the environmental board foresees as in the next 5 years, if we kind of really make a push right now to develop this product, where will the world be in regards to building materials, and will this be accepted? And how do we kind of go about, creating this product that general acceptance from the public? And we're both designers, we're both local here in Carbondale. And so, we'll kind of bring our knowledge of design into this product as well to create interest. But yeah, we're just here to ask for advice and see what you guys think about this idea. Do you have any thoughts?
Not yet, but yeah, great introduction.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I did read through the material provided in the packet, but what about like, the water bottles and like the single use stuff that ends up in the rivers and the streams and things? And I think the building material thing is great too. I was just curious. Seems like a huge need would be biodegradable, kind of the single use that just finds its way into these environments easily.
And we've definitely originally our initial thought was to replace single-use plastics, but our background is in architecture, and we really believe that there needs to be a big push in the construction industry to kind of replace some of these products in our landfills. Do you have a comment on that?
Not inherently, but yeah, just with our architecture background of sort of, I'll say like, that was, the aim. And then if we get into manufacturing and we find out that it would be too tough, or if there's some sort of like, is it blow forming that would kind of like be able to get into a water bottle, then if that's like the logical outcome of what the plastic can handle, then that would definitely be like the direction we would sort of pivot towards.
Or 3D printing the material. The problem right now is like the existing machinery to make vinyl is not equipped for biodegradables. And so we're gonna have to do this like major push to kind of explore how can we like redevelop the existing machinery, because to transition existing vinyl manufacturing into biodegradable manufacturing. And that's the first step that we're going to take is, so.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it true that the lashes is long considering?
Yeah, so great question. And we're gonna start exploring like interior applications first to kind of, test the longevity of the bioplastics, but it should, ASTM standards, the like requirement for biodegradables is, it's 5 years. So we can kind of definitely test that as we move forward.
But yeah, that would be an end goal to have efficient materials.
Yeah, end goal. Yeah. Yes.
And I can't remember the other one. So like LEED, is it any of this stuff discussed in kind of the LEED certifications and things, or is that, have you looked into those standards?
Yes, we have looked into the LEED standards. And yeah, I have some notes in here somewhere that has to do with.
Yeah,
Okay,
we'll
I
double
can get
check.
back to you.
So, I took chemistry in high school
Yeah.
and, our job was to blow the lab up basically. So other than that, and then I seem to remember that I maybe had a home chemistry set for a while. And that didn't work out well either. But, so how did you guys happen to get involved in bioplastic?
Yeah, great question. I should probably like start out with this story, but I actually reached out to a professor at the University of Utah, and we were actually exploring salt at the time, and then we kind of transitioned to algae. It was easier to work with. And we were just kind of exploring like how if we could make a plastic, and it was, and so that's kind of how it started. Yeah, because we do not have science backgrounds. No, we're still working with the University of Utah to help us kind of move this forward. Yeah.
What about
Yeah.
and talk about this maybe a year ago. Keyboard, but are reading about a guy who classified it and put it into material that could be used in 3D printer, something you could do all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it just seems like does the product, does it chips, for example, you work with it or something?
Yeah, so the process of creating vinyl is an extrusion process, and that's similar to creating pellets for a 3D printer. You need to, extrude the plastic. And like I was, mentioning before, the equipment to extrude vinyl sheets does not work with biodegradables at this point of time. So
Okay.
our initial step is to kind of study the existing machines and equipment to kind of adjust what can we do to adjust the existing equipment to extrude and create pellets to 3D print the
Yeah.
plastic as well. So
I'm only thinking that could be, they're starting to sell a lot of these printers now.
yeah.
And so you're going to have a big home market, frankly. And maybe that's a way to get in, without having to scale up to a large corporate size to get started on something.
Right.
And, some products that could be used in the house, whether it's plastic picnic wear or whatever they might want to try to do, but just something along those lines.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's a good idea.
Mhm.
Another question.
Yeah.
So a lot of controversy on biodegradable is if it's not disposed of properly, it actually is an environmental risk.
Right.
So what is the life cycle proposition of decomposing this biodegradable algae vinyl?
Yeah, so great question. And, I agree with you 100%. And, and that's why I'm here today, because I really want to talk about, like the whole life cycle of a building, right? Like we demolished the building, and a lot of the, let's say like 10% of the product, like, uh, trash gets recycled, like the concrete is recycled and the steel is recycled, but a lot of the plastic is, put aside into the landfills. And yes, you can recycle vinyl, but it's a big, process, and it's very toxic to the environment. And so if we look, into the future, and if we're actually kind of researching and, moving towards net zero, we're going to have to rethink how we, dispose of the waste from the demolition of the buildings. So if we start thinking about composting on site, or, how do we start thinking about, as, the environmental board, how do we start pushing exactly what you're saying? Like, we can create products, but how do we dispose of them correctly? And so that I think like composting is a great
Yeah.
solution.
Which, yeah, so we don't have an answer for it yet.
But we're thinking about it.
Yeah, this is like why we're here, is to have like, find what the sort of questions would be to make sure that we're thinking about this the right way, and we're not just like, well, it's can decompose in 100 years and we haven't solved it.
Right.
Yeah.
I think the bigger question, and I think that's a perception to the community, which we would handle or whatnot, but I think the bigger question is partnering and talking to someone like Evergreen Waste, and because when it comes down to it, composting and throwing away things, it all depends on the system that you have set up to do it properly.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing. Also, have you all looked into modular construction, which could
Yeah.
be a cool partnership for something like this? There is actually the largest net zero Habitat for Humanity in the Roaring Fork Valley has been doing a lot of net zero projects, and they're actually developing a modular construction website in Brideville. It's gonna be the largest of its kind, but it'd be really cool because they're up on new technology when it comes to building,
Right.
and they use a lot of robots.
Yeah.
And so looking into something like that possibly could be a good connection.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great idea.
Just throwing stuff
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
there.
That's great. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Fred.
Plastic to be made out of soybean oil, rape oil, hemp oil. And if it's just about anything except petroleum,
Yeah.
it's biodegradable.
Yeah.
So what is superior about algae to those other biodegradable materials?
Yeah, so we actually use soybean oil as a plasticizer mixed with a microalgae, and that's the basis of the compound. And we were looking into algae because of its life cycle. It does not. It uses photosynthesis, and where are my notes here? Algae can speed up the decomposition process of compost. Algae turns carbon dioxide into biomass and releases oxygen. Its life cycle does not emit toxic chemicals, and most importantly, no net increase in carbon dioxide. Yeah,
So it speeds up to generation.
correct. Yeah.
Good luck.
I know.
Thank
you.
Go for it.
Yeah, thank you. Another question, and do you, foresee, like building code in Carbondale kind of accepting more organic building materials down the line. Is that, do you agree
Yeah,
with that?
hopefully it's accepting, but is there sort of recommendations that could go into local codes that would incentivize it or encourage it, kind of like push it forward beyond to just, sure, if you want to do it, go for it?
Yeah, I would just say, in general, thinking about life cycle and the life cycle cost, life cycle analysis is certainly something that's very present within the building industry, and the IGCC, which Carbondale has adopted and is part of, that's kind of within the realm of what the thinking and the ethos is behind those codes, but specifically a biodegradable building material. I'm not aware of that being a specific, certainly not a discussion that we have had, and not something that we've been really aware of as a, specific push. I think the kind of bigger questions are, what is the system in place that allows something to be used properly from inception to completion? And if you don't have a waste facility that's able to properly decompose it, then it could be the most high-tech material, but where's that actually going to end up and go? So it does seem like in some of the comments from Quinn and Morgan, I think are apt, that thinking about the life cycle is really important to understand what other systems might need to change or be altered to have this, cool idea actually come to fruition.
And, we've had this conversation, and there's a lot of room to grow, but anything that we do create will be better than vinyl. Right. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Keep us posted.
Yeah.
Exciting that you're doing that work in Carbondale. It's great. Good luck.
Thanks, guys.
I might talk to the landfills too. I mean, Morgan mentioned the Evergreen, but they would probably be the source potentially at some point of, I know that the Picken County landfill has, created a whole lot of incentives against construction waste. So they may be an interesting, I don't know if you've already talked to them, but might be interesting perspective on,
Mhm.
yeah, if people can suddenly avoid their fees or at the landfill, that might be an incentive way to get at it. I don't think it's going to happen from a top-down regulatory thing very quickly until there's like a real viable product that, has some cost competitiveness, but
Mhm.
we're definitely supportive of it, and I would stay in touch, and it would be cool to try to use it, experimentally on some town project at some point. If you-
Yeah, and we hope,
get
so, we have our own projects, and so we hope to test it on our own work. So, yeah.
Cool. And if you'd like a specific contact at either Picken County landfill or Evergreen Waste or others, we're happy to provide that. So
That's a great
you've got
idea.
my email. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
guys. Thank you all.
Thanks. Great. Chris, welcome back. How are your travels?
Hi, thanks.
Back-
They were great.
back in
It's great to
town?
be home.
Yeah.
Great in person.
So
Yeah, so I was out, so I was a little behind. I'm not quite as up to date as I would hope to be, but I think I'm pretty up to date. There's not a whole lot. The micro hydro project on Nettle Creek got put out to rebid. I think it's the 30th of July. Okay, can confirm that or not, but I don't know if they got enough bids for that project, but I think they finally have all the stuff for it, which they had all these parts that were taking forever to get. So that's supposed to happen this summer, I think. And we also, pretty exciting, apparently have a contract with the building official in the works. So that would be a huge building official. We might actually have somebody, which obviously is good, and Jeff Dickinson is back. So if we can get him off the pickleball court, we might get some, stuff. I know there's stuff coming down from the state on the IECC 2021, so I think they're probably gonna jump into that pretty quickly. Bike ped committee, guess they've hired, we didn't meet them yet, but I think we'll meet them soon. There is a consultant who's been hired for this transportation, plan and, so they're gonna start into their process here at some point. There's gonna be probably a steering group of some kind that's gonna be involved in that process. It would be great to have somebody from the e-board on that. And I'm sure there'll be more info coming down the pike about that as they get ramped up. CAFKE similarly is doing a sort of in parallel, but hopefully with a lot of use to this ultimate plan. They are conducting a survey about crossing 133 and 133 traffic and 133 safety, which I would encourage everyone to fill out that survey if you haven't already. And that they've gotten, I think, about 300 responses already and done a bunch of First Friday stuff. So that's kind of exciting to see what information they have from people about 133 and hopefully, continuing to sort of push the ball forward on, where we can improve particularly pedestrian safety on 133. No, I would say that's probably the lowest priority. I would say it's more around the co-op between the roundabout and Garcia's, I would say, is the main focus. But it does extend, I think, their survey, I think, doesn't exclude all the way up to Red Hill or down to the high school. Yeah, it's CAFKE, I don't know if they.
Mhm. I'll distribute it to everybody after the meeting, but yeah, it's kind of 133 corridor, kind of at large with different locations, maybe with specific feedback, but.
Yeah. And we had a little bit of confusion about that of like whether there would be some confusion on the between the consultant and the CAFKE, like, because consultant's probably going to want to run a survey of some level too. So we were a little concerned about overlapping efforts. So hopefully we'll get that worked out so that they're complementary as opposed to overlapping and get hopefully a lot of the people to fill out the second survey as well. So there's that. Finally, I had a meeting or walkthrough with Dan Bullock, who's the chair of the tree board, and Marty and Lisa DiNardo and a couple of other folks. We walked around the whole sort of perimeter of the pool project and the Forest Service project downtown, to just sort of do an inventory on all of the trees on that section of block essentially. Because they're, at least I personally have had some serious concerns about the cumulative effect of both our project and the Forest Service project on basically denuding that block of its existing trees. Not entirely, but so we have gone around and sort of done a little bit of a survey of those trees, and Forest Service has released some plan that I think has more trees being planted, but they're obviously new trees, and there's about 6 or 7 very mature trees on that site. So that, and the Forest Service is sort of under they have the feeling that they're done with the process, so they're not really interested in negotiating or anything, although we do have a street tree that they are supposed to cut down that doesn't seem like it was reviewed particularly thoroughly. So we'll see what happens there.
Sorry, Chris, do you mind just repeating that? There's a street 3 that it sounds like they.
Yeah,
they
they have
didn't
a,
review
their
properly,
plan
is
involves,
what you said?
clearing all the buildings except for the back
Right,
maintenance
right.
building, and then building a block building that'll have a RV sort of drive-through thing behind it. And where that RV thing pulls out onto Went, you can go over there and walk around, and there's a really nice maple tree that's sort of in the bullseye of that. So And I'll answer your little couple of your points as well. The wastewater plant, yeah, did slip through. We sort of, the E-board did a pretty good job of pressing for doing this study of buildings and stuff. And I think the trustees cut it down to what they thought would be, you know, a budget within budget or something. So they focused on the town hall and the rec center and the public works facility. And at that point, at least my understanding was, or the sort of staff's presentation seemed to be that the wastewater treatment plant had gone through a lot of efficiency stuff before and was a huge undertaking. And but I think it is, I'm glad that you're paying attention to it. And hopefully, I mean, you've talked to Kevin, I'm sure, and engaged with him.
I engaged with Mark back when, and we walked through. So this last time I just saw this thing drop and just sent an email to, because I copied you.
Yeah.
And somebody, probably not the best way to go about things, but I was just kind of flustered.
Yeah.
The thing about the opportunity at the wastewater treatment facility for a heat pump in particular, beyond this dehumidification issue, is that there is a huge quantity of 50-degree water that's pouring off into the creek or into the river that forms a great reservoir for a heat pump that's much more efficient than trying to use the outside air. And that's been done in Denver. It's been done at not Gypsum, Avon, I think. So.
Yeah, well, Mark has retired, so I would get in touch with Kevin. And I don't know if he thinks he's got his thing in hand or what, but
They have ordered, the equipment has been bought and is on site, and they're just hiring someone to put it in. The engineering was done, so. But that doesn't mean that going forward, there's not either just at the minimum controls improvements to what's being proposed, or again, in the bigger picture for this studies, that should be included because it's the biggest single gas user. I think a lot of their studies had to do with electrical use for bubblers and pumps and things like that.
Well, yeah, and it is disappointing that wasn't sort of brought up, I guess, in that this project wasn't brought up. I wasn't really aware of it until we heard about that thing, so. But going forward, I think it's good to keep that on the radar. And then on the vehicle thing, that I feel like we have the intention of doing that. It was just that there was no cars for us to buy. And we do still have to build infrastructure too. So hopefully we're working on that.
Yeah, what was that?
We have to build charging infrastructure for fleet vehicles, and then on top of that, there were no regular police cars for one available.
Yeah, and just to jump in on that, Chris, it seems, I mean, that was really kind of through COVID that the supply chain issues with EVs, but I would imagine that that's,
Hopefully,
you know,
it's-
started to wane somewhat. And a big part of that Go EV City is to have the town be EV first. So when any equipment that they are purchasing, that resolution says, or that, I guess it's not a resolution, I'll use ordinance, I believe, is ordinance, Quinn? Resolution. I want to use I think it's a resolution, but basically says, the policy says the town needs to look at an electric vehicle or electric equipment first before purchasing something else, and bring that then to the Board of Trustees to say, you know, here are the options. We're going to make this selection. Here are the electric vehicle options. So we are hopeful that that is a kind of first step. And then this coming year, kind of from the e-board side, pushing that forward, especially on the charging side, is definitely a goal. Chris, just to clarify,
That's it.
kind of, you were saying that Lisa and Dan did a walkabout. What was the plan with that? Sounds like from what I've heard, the
It was
Forest
mostly
Service.
just trying to for all of us to gather
Information gathering.
information with each other about and just identify all the trees and I think probably for our purposes, the more pertinent or actionable area is around the pool. And I'd say in particular, there's one oak tree between the pool and the ditch that was, I think, maybe one of the first street trees the tree board ever planted. So it's starting to get to great shape. But the sketch plan has that whole ditch covered and pool decked or whatever, and no sign of that tree. So I think we're just trying to like make sure we think about that stuff before this project instead of, in the case of the Forest Service, at the end of the project. So.
Or relocate
I don't think you would successfully relocate a tree of this size without a lot of money. I think you can design the project perfectly fine around the tree and use it as shade for your pool.
Yeah.
In the. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, that's what we'll try to impress upon the design team.
Chris, I heard the architects are working on the drawings.
Yeah, I don't know I haven't gotten an update on where they are, but
Do they need to have your input from your group?
yeah, I'll talk to Lauren and see where they are and and hopefully next meeting she'll give me an update and I can figure out is there a group that the design team is engaging with at this sketch phase? And can we get some balance on that group so it's not entirely Parks and Rec members?
Right.
So.
Yeah, that would be, it seems like that's a good action item. And then the other thing would be, do you want to circulate what you and Dan and Lisa put together, especially for the pool, to the e-board? And if we
Okay.
can help support that, we would be.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't put anything
you know,
together, but I
seems like we'd be
can make
glad
a
to
little,
field that at least and
like,
then
take a
decide how we
screenshot
can.
of a map or Google or Earth or whatever and just highlight some stuff. But I would encourage all of y'all just to walk around the park and those two parcels and just check out what's going on over there.
Chris, have you walked the park with the Parks and Rec staff?
No, we had Carl on that little thing, but we didn't have Parks and Rec staffs.
Yeah, I would reach out to, Margaret or Eric or those and
Mhm.
because I know they are working through those designs and are meeting with the consultants, every couple of weeks. And I
Mhm.
bet they would love that input now and
Mhm.
would move that,
Yeah.
make sure the consultants understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, so.
I could just add to that. I've done a bunch of design build work. And it works best when that information is constantly moving back and forth instead of waiting 2 or 3 weeks down the road. And then what happens is decisions get made and generally they're irreversible.
Mhm.
So it's gotta be a constant.
Time is, time's important on that.
Well, I'll take note of that and
Yeah.
try to get more information and hopefully try to,
Mhm.
get some line of communication established here.
That sounds great. Thanks, Chris. Anything else? Are you?
Probably, but it's not coming to mind yet.
Okay. Okay. Gwen?
I have one thing town related. I don't know if you guys saw in the paper and others about some concerns with the restoration project and the Roaring Fork Audubon Society and migratory birds. So we worked with a contractor and basically shifted the schedule later in the season. We had a good meeting with them actually today here, the Roaring Fork stuff. So I hope we got that resolved.
That's great.
Yeah, super fun.
Thanks, Quinn. Great. Well, let's do just for ourselves here, a quick update from the subcommittee. We can just do kind of a quick where we are now, and then I'd like to move us into the kind of breakout session. I have a few things, but let's just go around and do a quick update. If there is anything. Climate action plan group, do you want anybody, Fred? I don't know if Morgan has officially become a part of the group, but anything on that, Fred, that you want to update or,
So
okay,
When was out of town?
summer is busy time, okay.
Yeah.
But intent to meet or plans to try to get together, it sounds like.
I think when everyone's in town, I'm in town now. For 3 days this week.
Morgan, give me your email.
I'll email you directly after
Okay.
the meeting. Does that work?
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Cause I've been inquiring about when we're gonna meet, we should include you in that.
Yeah. Okay, well,
I-
on the, do you have an update on the, let's do this first and then we can jump in. EV, do you want to just kind of, Quinn, whether that's update or kind of what you're thinking about?
Yeah, we haven't done much in the last month. Martine's been out of town. I want to make sure to include CLEER, and I'd be interested to see if Fred has inputs to kind of get us, more focused on things that we could look at from the resolution that we could tackle first. So kind of in planning mode.
Yeah.
Another way of saying I haven't done much.
Sounds good. On the Be Friendly side, Jane and I have been, and many others have been, in the dirt a lot the last few weeks, and the Sopris Bridge, which we adopted, which is on the 7th Street side. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 different days planting. All the plants are in that we ordered. The last thing we have to do is mulch, but that's been really positive and great, and have had a lot of interaction with Carl through that process. And it's looking really good. It's a really different space. It'd be nice to we could do a little e-board, go and take a look at it. But if you're over doing the walk like Chris suggested, if you're over by the pool and the Forest Service, just the Sopris Bridge is looking really, really nice.
I can get that mulch on there. It's gonna be dry this week.
Yeah, yeah. And all the plants are native, shade, low water. So that's the order. So that's kind of main thing on Be Friendly. And then the other piece is that the state grant for turf replacement that has its 2nd cycle open now, due at the end of the month. I've been working with Kevin directly to get that application in for the town of Carbondale, and we're on the BOT agenda next Tuesday, just for a kind of official, sign off that we are going to submit. So just a kind of reminder of what that is. Basically, it's if someone in the town has lawn or turf that they want to replace, they could apply for a grant that the town and plus state funds would support to incentivize that process. The plan right now is, because it's a matching funds program, so the plan is that Carbondale would put up $8,000 and then the state would support $8,000. That we could apply for up to $25,000, but based on the scale of kind of what we're doing, we felt like that was an appropriate starting point. As far as we know, it's a one-time grant program. And what else on it? It was very competitive when the first cycle opened, so we're hopeful that there'll still be enough funds, and probably because we're not asking for the whole amount, hopefully that makes Carbondale a bit more competitive. But that will be great if we can get that going. And there's been certainly interest in from Dandelion Day booth and the Be Friendly effort. There's been people interested in that. So that's what's happening with Be Friendly. Pat, did you have a quick comment?
I do. On that, it'd be wise to see about getting some signage over there at the bridge. in the
Totally.
Park.
Yeah, that's a good note. That's on our radar as well.
Good.
Yeah. Now that it's really transformed and looking good, we do. And then there's, we definitely want to get that going. That's a good note.
And then you'd want to have a phone number on there
And our email. Yeah.
and the email.
Yeah.
You might be able to get
Probably
one of
one.
these design people to whip you something up.
The what?
Yeah, I mean, I have the logo and I have the stuff.
You have all that
So
stuff,
we
yeah.
can, we should do it.
And then we'd want to
Yeah.
get it on maybe Facebook or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Where people would pick up on
Could-
that.
Could put it out there. Yeah. Thanks for that. That's a good note. Okay, any other update from subcommittee? Anybody online? Okay, so great. So my thinking, and we did this last year kind of in a full group setting, but I'm thinking it may be more worthwhile if we get into kind of smaller groups and just kind of talk. This will be because not everybody's here, because it's the summertime. I was thinking we could do part 1 now and then do a part 2 next meeting. But what I would like to do with the 4 subcommittees being climate action plan, Be Friendly, EV, and then the education outreach, getting us into, let's see, how many are we? We're 8. And we're 7 people, but I was thinking that it would be nice to just get into maybe 2 groups of 3 and a 4. And we've got time until Zuleika's here at about 7:30, and just kind of talk through just kind of a brainstorming session of what we want to be within those groups, what we want to be kind of working on, or what are the aspects that we would, Go EV has been taken. We've got the Go EV City, but there's a thought about identifying charging stations and kind of next steps. But the idea would be, and I have some note cards, but the idea would be that we could brainstorm together and then think about within each of those groups, what are 3 things that we're trying to, think are worthwhile to work on, and more specific, specific actions, specific recommendations for the Board of Trustees. So what I'd like to do is do 2 kind of 2 15-minute periods, and you can be in kind of 2 sessions each time, like one time Go EV and one time in another one. So have 2 groups thinking about education and EV first, and then the second 15 minutes we can talk about climate action and Be Friendly. And you don't have to be a part of the subcommittee. It's really just to kind of think about what we've have a lot of out of this meeting time, individual breakout sessions, but it's nice to just use our meeting time that's already allocated to kind of think through what we want to work on. So that's my proposal.
Just a note,
Yeah,
I can't turn off the meeting.
Yep.
I can stop the recording, but I can't turn off.
yep, we're aware of that. Yeah, I think that's fine. And there's nobody online, but the people who had planned to be on the video said that they would, either be here the next time or do it separately. So I think we're fine. Thanks, Kay. So that's my plan. Does anyone have any kind of thoughts on that, or does that sound good? That sound good? Okay. Well, let's do this. We could do maybe this side of the room and then that side of the room. Is that a good way to break it up? Or do we want to does that work for everybody?
Sure.
Okay. And how about you guys? Which one do you want to kind of brainstorm about first? Climate action, EV, Be Friendly, climate action? Okay. Okay. So let's take 15 minutes, and I'm going to give you, this is just some note cards. If you want to just put on this, there's kind of 3 cards we want to put on, just in an effort to be consolidated, 3 items that are, think are worthwhile to kind of continue to bring as recommendations and work toward, work towards an item or recommendation on that. And then Quinn and Morgan and myself, do you want to talk about Be Friendly, EV, education outreach, climate action? Up for any of those? Okay, I'm going to turn off my microphone and we'll We'll do 15 minutes until 7:15.
There she is.
Were you guys just waiting for me?
You're gonna rescue us from the.
Oh. Awesome. Okay, fantastic.
What do we do? So we didn't.
So I have an idea.
Good.
How unusual. I used to go up to the head of the Aspen Ski Company. I knew him pretty well. And I'd see him, you know, somewhere around the ski area. So he said, Mike, I can think of this. Oh my God. Don't tell me that. So here's the thing with this climate action committee, subcommittee. Number one, who's in charge?
I would say, Michael Ford. Always been the report to this committee.
You're getting the notes?
Whatever.
Wanna put them on?
Doodling.
How about, let's put them on there and just keep one set of notes and we can turn it over.
Okay.
You know, how this and we use.
All right. Okay, so leadership and do you think it needs to be more clear or something? Or?
Well, somebody needs to be in charge of the meetings. When they're gonna take place. The topics of discussion are gonna be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they've struggled to meet in the past.
You know, they haven't met at all.
You guys have never met.
Oh, yeah, we've been. I bet it's been 2 or 3 months.
Is that good?
Sounds good. Who is meeting? You and Michael?
And Michael and Quinn. And, Tessa. And,
Where, Tessa has some of these meetings.
what she had.
Still on the table?
I don't know.
Probably, I don't know, we'll see what happens with these rules about boards and issues, but.
That are
Might be a follow up on that.
yeah, are the rules,
It gets 3 consecutive meetings
is it,
or more than the annual meeting or something like that. But don't.
well, good to know that there's actually a process going on to create rules for the board. All the boards. We tried to get the rules on this board years ago and nobody could figure it out, so. So that's number one. Number two, there needs to be goals.
Well, it almost seems like it'd be nice, almost like. Have the committee give everybody a sense of what the roadmap is, because people read at the beginning and then sort of choose that maybe what are the details? Because I mean, a lot of the hard to say what's not in that plan, like all of our other committees are dealing with things that are relevant to that. Sure thing. So it's like almost like too big of a man. It's still up sometimes to be able to focus.
No one of the things to be accomplished. Well, breaking on the actions, I think was in the 5 and 6. They were all actions. I don't remember what they were. But,
Yeah, it'd be great to get that. I mean, that's, I think what she's sort of hoping to get down to the 5 or 6 and then order them and then put them in budget files. We kind of, and it'd be cool if, I don't know, Fred, talking about these, you know, what is your, if you have some easy-ish way to get a ballpark on like, what's your thing for your buck?
Yeah,
What's all the climate, what was it, carbon life cycle cost?
Sure.
And what projects, I know you criticized the 8th Street project for being not really a climate project, but we had sort of categorized it as such.
Yeah.
It's that street thing, but.
Yeah.
It seems like the gas ban is kind of
So,
on the top of the list. It's in that whole building electrification.
Yeah.
That's my fault.
your fault.
Your fault. What do you mean you've been pushing on it?
The gas ban,
No, you've been pushing for it. It's not your fault.
from the first day I joined.
A year, over a year, yeah. Yeah, I was just looking at, our terms. Mine comes up in December. And, to be renewed. Hopefully I don't get thrown off. Like the mayor tried to get me thrown off a year ago. But, yeah, so.
So they renew these every year,
Every 2 years.
in 2 years.
Yeah, right.
Well,
Yeah,
it'll be 3 years.
It's gonna be 3 years. And then I think that,
But obviously, that's only formally. In practice, people generally just go off and look at the moment. You don't have to.
oh yeah, you can go off anytime. Yeah, right. And you can come in anytime.
But the idea was 3 years.
Okay.
Was like a good middle ground. It seemed like
Yeah.
you get 1 year to learn, second year to be good, and then 3 years later. So. Your border.
That sounds good.
You can't throw a guy off for once he's won the order of the dandelion.
Well, there's nobody who can get thrown off anything. If any, the only concept is. It's trying to get to a 7-member board across the board. It's just going to be about letting people rotate off.
That's a whole.
And there will still be alternates as well.
Key goals. What are the key goals of the?
Is this yours or?
Yeah, I wrote that up. What are the key goals? Have any
Emissions reductions.
emissions reductions? Okay, write that down. And, are you aware of what the target dates are?
Yes.
And they are.
Let's see, they've been revised. 100% by 2050.
Yeah.
And I think 40% by 2030.
Something.
Yeah.
I think it's 50% on it. That's close enough. Okay, so, so the next question is, where is the responsibility for meeting the goals? And I got more questions than answers. That's,
Yeah, where is this? I mean, that's why none of these things ever happen.
well, wait a minute.
But,
We've got Be-Friendly going. We got 8th Street going. We've got pools going. The other thing we just got, there's something else here too. We've got matching funds for lawns. We've got all this stuff. We've got building weed going. We've got town money going after this thing and that thing and so on and so forth. But, so my question is, the second question to that question is, does anybody care? Really?
Yeah.
Does it matter?
Absolutely.
Does it matter that, and if it matters, why isn't something being done? Am I wrong to ask that question?
I mean, I think. I wouldn't say nothing is being done, but obviously it's.
What do you want to see?
I want to see our emissions go down. Right here, here it is right here. Oh, that's Lafayette. I didn't bring the one from
Did they go down?
Gardendale.
Lafayette go down?
They did. I put this in here, by the way, as Apple sent it out in emails. Because I wasn't sure that when we got the same thing for Excel, full spreadsheet. This is just pieces of the spreadsheet. And the key things, for example, for City of Lafayette, there are about 30,000 people. they have a figure that they use for the different characteristics and how good is the electricity like. In this case, it's 0.4490. So that's the figure that they've come up with. Okay, that was in 2022. So now they're looking
490 of carbon.
at metric tons of CO2. MWH, yeah. Megawatt hours, yeah. And so in the previous year, it was 0.477. So it increased by 0.022, let's say, around numbers.
So they went up.
So their electricity got better.
Oh, they're the mix of it, but not their overall emissions. They covered
We're
gas.
coming to that, okay, so if we go down and here's the certified renewable percentage, so that figure comes out of the fact that when you look at their coal through their biomass, they have for 2022 a figure of 42.28. The previous year, in 2021, the figure was 38.25%. So they've improved by about 4% year on year. So
That's
keep that in
renewable
mind.
mix, or is that emissions reduction?
Well, that's what that creates then. Because then you go and you look at Excel three, they give you the number of customers. Number of customers between the previous year and the new year are almost the same. Haven't changed. The energy consumption, I'll just skip that. The carbon emissions are given in tons, metric tons. In 21, 2 years ago, the carbon emissions for their whole town was 104,000. Now they're 92,000. So that's a difference of 12,000, which is over 10%, almost 12%, isn't it? So they have improved their emissions by 12%.
So what's the, they have a sustainability manager?
I don't know, but I can tell you the electricity is out. So if you multiply the little kilowatt hours, okay, like you have on your meter, by that figure, you'll get the metric tons. It's just a straight multiplication. So what this basically is saying, the same thing that's happening in carbon in the last few years, is electricity's got better progressively. And so we've actually had fewer emissions.
And our thing looks similar on that front.
Look similar to this. Now, this is something else, but this is for other buildings. This came out of climate action. That was, I think it was the earlier one too. So this is just the buildings. It's got nothing to do with transportation, nothing to do with natural gas, all electricity. So just to let you guys know, I have contacted Holy Cross and published a report shortly, like this one. And I contacted Black Hills, and they will be getting a report out to us in the near future. So we'll be having that stuff. And I've been calling on the last 3 or 4 years. I think I've been asking for this information, right about this time, because they have a website you go to, and it has every town that they supply electricity to, and every county that they supply electricity to. And in June, they publish it for all of those municipalities. So you go right to it, boom, very transparent. So.
Were you the one who was talking about municipal electricity at one point?
Yes.
Because I was, yeah, I mean, I don't think Carbondale wants to start its own one, but I was curious how hard it would be for us to
Not easy.
go over to Holy Cross.
Yeah.
Take the rest of the second half of town. Because that would hugely improve our,
Yeah, it would.
they're so much farther ahead on their renewable
Yeah, yeah.
portfolio.
I was up at.
It'd be interesting to look into what that takes politically, or like, is it even possible, or?
Yeah, actually, if you call Holy Cross, they'll talk to you about.
Well, I'll talk to my friend Alex. Scott, re-elected board.
I
should have him come over. Maybe talk to us.
Have they elected that board?
What?
They have elected the board? And who?
Alex Segolia.
Okay, good.
So, Boulder worked on it for years and they settled, they had pounds, so.
They wanted to go independent on their own, build their own utility, right?
They wanted to take over Excel's lines and do their own electric system. I once accidentally walked into a meeting up at Aspen at Buttermilk, hotel down there. It was the Colorado Council of Municipal Electric. Conference. Wow, look at this. Who knew? There's like 20 towns in Colorado. This goes way back now. Christie just became a mayor. And Lebanon was all private. And like that. So there's a lot of advantages to do that. And so Boulder tried to, what happens is you have to buy out, you have to there's a lawsuit, and of course, the PUC gets involved. And you have to come up with a price that's mutually acceptable. You take over the stuff, because obviously they're giving up customers and they're giving up infrastructure that they've invested in. That sort of thing, so it's not.
You have
really-
to engineer something where holy cost thought out there, so.
Yeah,
But you'll probably have to make some kind of case of damage or something that if you see about it.
well, and it's kind of, might be easier here because Excel buys power, rather fully cost buys power.
Very low, like 8%.
They buy like 8%. Yeah, so anyway, they have a business. Yeah. They use stations. But if we're, it's definitely, Jay and I talked about it. He said, "Man, that's gonna be a long haul."
It's a long haul,
That's
yeah.
good.
I mean, it would be something that would almost, would be like something that staff's never gonna have time to do probably, but like maybe this committee, I mean, I don't think that's gonna be the top priority, but.
Well, it's just, it should be on the list, should be on the goals of the community to move in that direction or think about it in that direction. But it's gonna be, there's gonna be other towns in Colorado that want to do it. And you can, then you can do your microgrids, your own storage units, you can do stuff, invest locally and so on. There's I think a lot of advantage to it, but that's in the future. So responsibility is a responsibility. Okay.
Did we,
Topic shift,
Okay.
you guys right on your ideas. Awesome. No, do you want to, education outreach, EV, be friendly? When do you all want to? I'll leave these. I'll leave those.
want this one?
Sure.
Okay.
Next topic,
I guess so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about next DAB subcommittee meeting. Still have no idea what.
You don't have any interest in joining this, maybe?
I'm totally interested in something, that's my whole thing, but I felt like we had a bunch of people and they should work together and figure out what to do. Okay. And rather than have the know-it-all sitting there all the time, telling you gotta do this, you gotta do that. So let's let people get involved. They're volunteers here. And with some supervision, should be able to have some meetings and get somewhere.
Well, like I said, we broke down the actions of our subgroups, larger subgroups, but none of those were very specific. Well, do this.
What were those?
Okay.
Well, that would be cool to, be nice to get a little, I think it would be, I like this idea of we're trying to get everybody's heads on the same page a little bit.
Sure.
What is, like, let's review the plan before a meeting or something and it seems like this committee would be more effective if it maybe was focused specifically on building electrification as
Could be.
opposed to
Yeah.
the climate action plan, which is sort of like such a huge subject that you just don't even know what are we going to talk about today.
Yeah, that's why I throw out the goals of the 2030 and the 2050, because that's really the whole point.
Like to be friendly, I think really successfully by training themselves with the bee and making the pollinator thing. That's a great, let's just use comes out of their entry point. A lot of things tied into that that are beneficial as well, but
Yeah.
like, I don't know, because the EV city is sort of taking out transportation to pump COPs. But maybe EV, that should probably just be.
It could be,
You
it
know,
could be car chargers.
car chargers and then, maybe he's the one that goes to the bike head, plans.
A year ago, when Lauren got here, I sent her an email and said, what do you think about getting involved in car chargers? That we going back to the fine, what she send me a map of where they're at. So I put a Google Earth map together, sent to her, never came back. Subsequently, I said, with Kevin, public works guy, talked to him extensively about the one that's over at Cowan Center. How it came to be, all the details about it, how it was getting used, blah, blah, blah. And I suggested, how about, because at that time, Scott Mills, who's been on the board here, emailed me and said, you got to look at these car chargers on street lighting posts, on lamp posts. They're doing it in California like big time, like houses. And unfortunately, after I got to Kevin, so I don't think it's going to work if they're only 110 volts. That's not enough power to make it work. And I said, well, can we just put new wire in the conduit? He said, there is no conduit. So when it's all, it's a simple thing you're supposed to do. And
None of this is like that.
that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. I mean, I don't know it for a fact, but that's what he told me. So I suggested a couple of different locations back of the launch pad, which he, by the way, applied for one there to go in for a level 3 charge, fast ones. And it was going to be too much money, and the grant he was looking at wasn't going to work. And so, you get into all this, you have to pick locations where you think it's going to have the most use. You're going to look for things where big power is readily available. I even looked into car chargers that have a battery in them. Yeah, we talked about that. And they're out there, and there's more of them out there. And for the very reason, because then you don't have to do a huge, expensive $50,000 rewire to get your power level in. That sort of thing. So, there's a whole, and there's so much literature on it. Like that. So many people work at different companies, Volkswagen's in there. Tesla, of course, is in there. All that. So I think.
The launch pad didn't have.
Well, they got a transport right across the alley, so it wouldn't be that hard. Doable.
I think the EV, my feeling is, I don't know, my feeling is that this is one area where I feel like the private sector is kind of getting some momentum. So I would be more interested in what the town is doing with its fleet and focusing on, in terms of bang for our buck, I just don't know.
Well,
I think the bang for our buck would be trying to build enough infrastructure so we can get to the place we can buy, but we don't even take that.
yeah,
We don't have anywhere to charge, so.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a whole-
that's chicken and the egg. So right out there in the back, there ought to be a charger.
Yeah.
Parking lot for the cop cars.
I think that should be a huge priority for the budget for next year. Is to make that happen.
And there's plenty of cop cars, battery cop cars out there now. Aspen's got them. I mean, they're expensive, but in the long run,
They'll be there in 5 years.
in the long run, you're going to be, and you get one in and you see how it works.
But so I think that's my feeling is,
Go ahead, please. Okay, with the board of trustee guys, they're good over that. Community outreach. So yours truly saw that the Rotary had created a environmental committee. So I went to their meeting and I got invited to their separate meeting, and I've been to 2 of them now. And they are possibly going to have a chat with Lauren about some goals. And I said, don't mention my name. I'm radioactive over there, so just go ahead and talk to them and see what comes out of it. I said, the idea here is that if other groups bring up the subject, it will get some attention. E-boards tried for years. It was. Anyway, so Rotary, okay, so that's already in the works. Chamber of Commerce, other groups, there's other social groups like there's other groups like that. Yeah.
It could be fun to take their, take a page out of there, see if they can let us use the PVC slogan, how do you make it environmental?
Sure, yeah, sure. I mean, the conversation, we gotta have a conversation with these other groups, these business groups, social groups. If they're not in on it, nothing's gonna happen. And, schools, okay, so I think this coming fall, I will promise you that I will be over to schools, high schools, talking to some kids. And I know I've spoken to their teachers, I know other teachers in there, don't know, they say, come on, let's do it.
Yeah, and that's one thing also is, we should try to recruit a youth member. Or if we can, that's one, it's not a requirement, but it's like one of our thoughts of this new whatever missions is to try to get youth members, engaged.
Well, now that Greta Thunberg has graduated from high school, she's no longer a student.
Yeah, we can
Just
get her.
fill in behind her there.
Come over on your cell.
Yeah, get some Paul shoes and go there right now. She has made a difference in the world. She's made. So anyway, the school, the youth member that comes up in the fall, other groups. So, and as you know, I send out emails.
So do you go into class, you go to environmental science classrooms or to the Earth Club or just?
I think I get in touch with the teachers who are in charge of those programs and see how they work. I have no idea.
It would be, I wonder if there is an Earth Club or.
Could be.
Wonder if invite them to a meeting.
Could be the Boy Scouts, why not? Boy and Girl Scouts.
And that was one of my
Merit
friends'
badges.
thoughts was, that's what you. Put overturn the divorce, that's pretty awful, and you have all this.
You know,
Cover the
folks that
breathing, little-
come out, chain themselves to the trunk, tree trunks. Now they use super glue now there. I see that all the time. People glue themselves to the street, glue themselves in buildings.
I forward articles from the Washington Post.
You do.
That is a
Yeah.
outreach.
That is, you should be on my committee. In fact,
Are you guys?
Brett has just joined the outreach education committee.
Yeah, this is a great way to like.
He is the master emailer.
You guys have.
Yeah, I don't think a bad shooting. What am I supposed to call him?
Or chief.
Sounds like Chris is kind of ready.
Oh.
Do you all want to just do a?
No, get Brett on.
And then a final thing I would just say is like, we've already talked about this, but. Think about. I think of plan for.
Yeah. Actually, I sent something in the email, speaking of emails,
Yeah, I saw that.
and I put a little sample. I didn't bring it with me tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You all should kind of go through the stuff. Should we want to just kind of come back and? That's.
Be friendly. Yeah, we can be friendly.
Yeah, as far as you guys is good.
That was the earlier conversation. Got that. As a group, don't you?
Be friendly, I think we have a pretty good plan.
Yeah, I think so too.
Fun.
I think the only thing, the long range thing to add to that is what Dan brought up the last meeting, or meeting before, the lighting stuff. About.
From the landscapes.
Yeah, because that stuff affects.
Yeah, yeah.
Light pollution.
Yeah.
And the town, I just was riding my bike down the bike path and I think the town just acquired one of the worst offenders in town, which is a self-storage building. I think it's on our public works lot. But it has three of the most egregiously awful lights.
Yeah.
Um, And we just bought it, so I don't expect that the building to be considered immediately, but
Yeah.
that's like an easy low hanging fruit.
Look at the leak, looking at her phone, mine. She must be playing computer games.
Smiling. Yeah, let's just do a quick, this is part one and we'll do for this. But let's just do a quick kind of like. Kind of a good report out. From what our
Yeah, do you want to go first with whichever one you started with and then we can go back and forth? Or Chris, if you got that, yeah.
We started with the climate action plan and the first question was just like, trying to get meetings to happen and maybe, then there was further talk about maybe, or I guess I proposed, be nice maybe to have sort of a little bit of a review of the plan on an annual basis or something, so that we kind of can go back to the source documents or whatever a little bit, or maybe it's just a reading exercise, but there was that. And then it seemed, the overarching goal is emissions reductions. And so we talked about some comparables with Lafayette and other towns. And it seems like the building electrification is kind of like the biggest thing on their plate. And in some ways, maybe, well, I don't know. I think that's up to them to decide, but
And just to be clarified, them being
the CA, the
Climate
subcommittee.
Action Subcommittee.
But maybe to narrow in a little bit more on buildings and building emissions as this EV thing comes up, that may want to expand a little bit to sort of transportation stuff. And then you might have a little bit more like less of a dispersed focus.
Great.
That was basically it for that. On education and outreach was just, organizations, Rotary, Chamber, schools, Earth clubs, media, the media, and then buying advertisements and making a plan for that and designing them well and making them as effective as possible. On the EV, we didn't really get to these last two very much, but
We just did two also, so.
we
just did.
my opinion was that I think that in the EV city thing, we should start with our own clean up our own yard first, essentially, and really try to push the infrastructure forward for town fleet electrification stuff. So then at least we have there's that excuse has gone away of, well, we don't have anywhere to charge these vehicles if we buy them. So it seems like that's the chicken before the egg in this case or whatever.
You
But
mentioned chargers for cop cars, which would be a good first move.
yeah,
Getting the infrastructure in place, yeah.
and I don't know, I mean, I'm sure there are other ideas about private stuff, but I don't know what our effectiveness would be as much in that realm and I do feel like there is more private and federal investment in EV charging stuff happening beyond our purview, so it may not be as important for us to, and to me, it seems like a good business strategy for businesses to put these things in, like the honey butter or whatever. There you go, have your lunch. So maybe it is a business outreach thing, but sorry, I'm just going on. And then be friendly, we didn't get to be friendly, but I just reiterated what Dan Bullock brought up that either last or the meeting before about light pollution and how in the long term, we should put that on the be friendly or pollinator protection.
Yeah. Great.
Maybe that's too much for be friendly, but
It's great. No, I think that sounds good. Thanks, guys. So we
Did I
talked
get
about,
anything? Missing anything?
yeah, anything else that,
I think you got it.
All right.
I'll just go through. You want to go?
Can I ask a question? I know this is a brainstorm. For climate action planning or working on that, we didn't get to touch that one. But did y'all talk any about like choosing an issue? As the climate action plan is so large, just one issue that we want to tackle as a board and maybe concentrate on that for the year? Apologies. But choosing one issue for the climate action plan, since there are so many, and focus on that as the year, because it's really overwhelming, and trying to tackle all of that sort of can take away from being actionable. It kind of feels a little paralyzing. But just tossing that out there to think about in the future for the next brainstorm session, if we're all passionate about something, and maybe that's something we determine in the subcommittee meeting. But I think it could help us create a tangible goal for the climate action plan.
Well, actually, Chris touched on that. And his suggestion was we focus on building electrification.
Okay,
Or building emissions, maybe if that's too specific,
Okay.
but, I don't know. I think you guys have to decide what you're
Yeah.
enthusiastic about, but, I think that would be very useful, because I think the climate action plan really should encompass all of these subcommittees essentially, and is more of like a e-board level document
Right.
that, like, I feel like should be reviewed and kind of familiarized for new members and stuff. That's so huge. How do you?
I know,
Mhm,
there's so
mhm.
much in there. Cool. Awesome.
I want to just go quickly because Zuleika's here and I'm mindful of her time, but our group talked about from education outreach. We talked about the importance of putting a community outreach plan together. So that would include how often do we want to have some kind of an education piece? What format would those be in? We talked about considering establishing a digital or a social media kind of presence. Doesn't necessarily, so thinking about whether that's through the town website, which we had talked about before, or potentially through Facebook, just a place to go for different resources. And then being strategic about eBoard's involvement in town and community events. So within Dandelion Day, which we did an education piece this year, which I think was successful, but thinking about other events and how the eBoard can be involved.
Yeah.
And then Quinn, I think you have the other.
I do, I stole them. So the other one we talked about was the Be Friendly. And the first thing of our three, we put on the turf replacement grant award, and then implementation and how that's done. We talked about some sort of workshop for grant award winners, so they kind of understand the process and all those things. The second one was more focused on kind of the education component. Basically kind of we talked about how there's a lot of material already out there from the CSU extension and other things, but just how to make that more accessible and get people aware of what's available. And so we put down a resource distribution for planting, soil, and watering, basically just kind of the basic things you would implement if you were going to replace the turf in your yard or whatever. And then the last thing we talked about was the seed swap program. Basically, how can we, seemed like it was very successful Dandelion Days, and how do we grow that program, more events or more awareness, more education on that process. So the three things.
Great. Well, that was a good kind of first session, and we will talk about that more next month, but good to kind of like brainstorm. We'll collect that and put that into really comprehensive plan, but good to kind of start that going. Zuleika, welcome. Yeah, feel free to come wherever you'd like to sit. I know you've been came from another event.
Yes, yeah,
Busy day.
yeah, we got to give away our first 18 e-bikes, or not give away. They were purchased, but for a very discounted price. So big training session. Wonderful. Well, I can give a brief update about what we've been up to with regards to Carbondale. And then the main thing that I want to talk about is this path to net zero roadmap for existing buildings that you all got in your packet. What have we been doing? So great news, about the, e-lawn care program. The gentleman from the Rotary Club had the contact number for the guy who owns Ace. And so they've put together, Ace has put together a voucher program. So it'll be, I think and I can look up the details, but it'll be, I think there's 8 different pieces of equipment, and they were specific that they wanted it to be a replacement program. So they want people to trade in their gas using equipment in order to get the voucher. Which is fine with us. I mean, I know we want to encourage everyone to purchase them new too. But I feel like this is okay, to require that they are getting rid of a gas guzzler. So the vouchers will be, there's, I think, 4 different items that will have a $50 voucher and like 4 items that have a $25 voucher. So it's not huge, but hopefully it's enough of an incentive if people are considering anyway. What we're working on now is how we're going to do that replacement, how people will access those vouchers. And what we're thinking right now is that we'll have a, like a roll off, a big dumpster at the 3rd Street Center. We still have to clear that with the 3rd Street Center. So don't quote me. And then because our offices are there, people can come by anytime, to do that exchange. We are hoping to kind of make this a live action thing by mid-July. So we're working on that, on just getting those last pieces together. Ace said that they would have plenty of things to buy. Yes.
Where's the money coming from?
Yeah.
What money?
Money that, 450,
Oh,
425.
from Ace. Ace Hardware.
Ace is-
They're providing the vouchers.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
Make the discount.
Yeah. Well, hey. Yeah.
Those tools have got, they're tools like weed eaters.
Mm-hmm.
So they got gas.
Mm-hmm.
They got oil in it.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be carefully.
They have to, what we will in our marketing, we will tell people that they have to come empty. We can't deal with it because the recycling company, Green Zone, that we're getting the dumpster from, they need it empty. And yeah. So we will need to ensure that people are emptying, and we will just make them take it home and empty it if it is not empty. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm excited.
Do you think it's worth some sort of letter from us, like thanking Ace or whatever for this sort of program?
Yeah. Yeah, it was super easy. He was very agreeable to helping. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, right. Dead end. Oh, here's the right person.
Yep.
What else? And then so with the home energy score pilot project, we are moving ever closer. We're just about to, I think, go into this relationship with another organization so that they can be our provider of the home energy score. And it's I don't think the details matter very much, but basically we can't just go do home energy scores and call them home energy scores. We need an organization that is set up to do them, to be our provider. We can do the scores, no problem, but in order to get on the map and to have it all work out the way we want, to use the report and everything, we need a provider. So Heidi has been talking to a couple of different organizations, and I think she's got one more meeting this week before we can finalize that. Yes.
Is there anybody doing that in the valley right now?
No. No.
No, there's no professionals around.
Do you mean doing the home energy score, or do you mean doing being the provider?
Either one.
No, neither. I guess no to both. So the organizations that can be the providers, they're like bigger, like national organizations who train people and, you know, do the whole thing. And then the home energy score hasn't really taken off in Colorado. It's used quite extensively in other states. I think it was developed by NREL. I'm not totally sure, but and so there just aren't that many people in general in Colorado doing them. And so I suppose there could be someone who was trained to do them at some point, but we don't know who that person or people may be.
You know, Mary Wiener's up at CORE now.
Yeah. Mhm.
And they're redoing a bunch of buildings. And Scott Mills, who used to be on this board, is doing some of that work for them. And so I'm sure it just seemed like the 4 communities, what is it, 3 communities? 4, that are in the valley here would be interested in getting that kind of service set up.
Yeah.
You know, and that would be something that would make working here in Carbondale more attractive.
Yeah.
And it'd be worth making a call up to Mary or somebody
Yeah.
to just say, hey, you know, does this fit something that you guys are interested in doing? Then we can get these guys to do all of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, right now the plan is to train Heidi. So you have to already have one of the other certifications, like be a HERS rater or a building analyst professional. So you do have to have some building science knowledge. And Heidi's that person for us, and Christina as well. So right now what we're working on is finding some additional funding so that we can train Christina to do them as well. And but right now the plan is to just train Heidi. It's 100, we're aiming for 100 houses. It's a lot for one person. So if we can train Christina too, that would be ideal. And yes.
Would this include things like blower doors?
No, the home energy score does not use a blower door test.
And this would be rolled out across the CLEER working area, not just Carbondale, right?
Just Carbondale.
Oh, just
Yeah,
Carbondale.
it is a Carbondale program.
All right.
Yeah. Hopefully what we'll learn from Carbondale, other people will, GCE will want to do it. And again, we're hoping to kind of have that, start doing these assessments kind of mid-July, we're thinking. So we've got the providership training, and then the last piece is getting people to sign up. So we're working with the town to put some notices on utility bills and in their online utility billing system as well. So for people who get paper bills, they would be in their paper bill. And then for people who get online bills, it would just come up when they get their bill. And then some other places like on the landing page for the town and the town website, the Facebook page. So really trying to utilize all of the variety of the town ways to communicate. And we still haven't figured out if it's going to be kind of like a first come, first serve. We don't want it entirely to just be first come, first serve, because we do want a broad sampling of houses in Carbondale. So if by some weird thing, we got a lot of people in one neighborhood, we'd want to spread that out a little bit because we want a better idea of overall, what does Carbondale look like?
Because this is sort of helping benchmark essentially.
A little bit. It helps in a lot of ways. It'll help us with a bit of benchmarking for our current town for housing stock. And it will give us a sense too, if the home energy score is an effective way to encourage people to do the upgrades, to show that it is, once people know how to be better, they will decide to be better. Their homes, not them. Improve their homes. Yeah, but it would actually help a lot with benchmarking the town. Yeah, we'd have a really much better idea. Yeah, so then this last piece, are there any other questions about those? Those are kind of the main things we've been working on. And as you guys probably remember, like the kind of the part of CLEER's contract that was mostly code related kind of got split off, and Jeff Dickinson at Biospaces is doing that kind of separately now because he was doing it for us anyway. So I cannot report on that. Okay, so going into the path to net zero for existing buildings, quick context for this in case anybody needs it. It's fairly easy to map out a path to net zero for new construction because it can all be code-based. We can force people to build new things in a way that we want them to. It's much harder with existing buildings to somehow move towards net zero. So this is our attempt at that. And the reason that, well, there's a couple of reasons of bringing it to you all. One is that we're going to have a working session with the Board of Trustees in July to talk about this. And they have not officially adopted this yet. So they have adopted the path to net zero for new construction. They did that last fall. And they have seen this, but we haven't had much of a discussion with them yet about it. And so it would be really great to get your all thoughts on this before we have the workshop or the working session with the Board of Trustees in July. What's hard about this is that it's quite aspirational, right? We don't have a lot of control about what people do with their own homes. There's a lot of equity issues when we come to these kinds of things that we have to be thoughtful of. And so what we've tried to put together is sort of a way to, encourage it without it being forced necessarily. And then when the forcing happens, they've got some time to do it, or they know when it's going to be happening. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to look over this in any thorough way, but before we start talking about it more, did anybody have any questions about what anything means in here, or like, did it make sense looking at it?
My question is,
Yeah.
if it's so easy to pass building codes that restrict all electric and new construction, why haven't we
We've done it yet? Yeah, I can't answer that question. And maybe I shouldn't say that it's so easy. What I'm saying is that, there's a big difference between new construction and existing buildings, right?
I agree.
Yeah.
As far as existing buildings are concerned, my thought has always been find some volunteers who are willing to take these steps with the heat pumps and the rooftop solar and what have you, and use them as an example and show people how much money they're saving.
Yeah.
And they're cutting down on their emissions.
Yeah.
And all the good things that are happening from what these volunteers are doing, and set them as an example.
Yeah, doing case studies and really doing outreach with case studies. People really see it. Yeah.
I have another question.
Uh-huh.
Okay. What are the repercussions of when you hit this point and you have to do it and you don't, or you can't afford it?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Are the enforced
None.
None of the moment. Okay.
I mean, I don't know. We're not looking at sticks right now, just
okay.
carrots.
Okay. Okay, cool.
And they're not even really carrots. They're really just like, here's here are some ideas of ways we can move this forward.
Okay.
Because, residential in some of the studies that GCE did with Excel last summer, residential existing buildings are like over 50% of the building energy use, right? It's like a lot in residential. And most of our residences are already built. And so we really do need to find ways to help people to make the choice to do this. And GCE is working on that like extensively, like trying to find consistent funding for programs like Re-Energize and things like that. But there's got to be other things too. So,
Okay,
yeah.
cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Question?
Yeah.
A lot of thought went into this chart.
Yeah.
Who's the author?
It's mostly Jeff and Heidi.
Jeff and Heidi?
Yeah.
Okay. And did they come across any examples of programs in other communities that do work?
Well, for example, there are other communities that do benchmarking, right?
yes.
Mostly with commercial. There's not a lot of residential benchmarking programs out there that I know about. There might be that I just don't know about them. And, when we talked to this organization called Earth Advantage, who's done a huge amount of the home energy scores in Portland, they were appropriately impressed that we wanted to use the home energy score as a way to kind of force these upgrades. And nobody else, as far as we know, is doing anything like that.
There was that program that Ithaca was supposedly on, turned
Right.
out to be false.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of a tragic
Yes,
situation
it
there.
is.
I'm familiar with some. I did some online looking around to try and find some examples and didn't have much luck.
Mm-hmm.
And I did find some examples in Europe. And there's one program they were doing multifamily, and I kind of think that the multifamily is maybe a better target than
Yeah.
single family for several reasons. Which I won't list here, but you can think of them. So they were doing, they had a set of townhouses, take 2nd Street down there near the school. And you've got a row of townhouses there, which are all similar construction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had come up with a system where they would they'd create a new outside wall with new door, with new windows, with new wiring and everything else they needed, and just apply it to the side of the building.
Wow.
Right? So not tearing up the inside of the house, none of that sort of stuff. And then the really cool part was on the roof. They had a factory set up and they cut a hole in the roof like 4 feet wide by 12 feet long down the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And then they build a utility piece that had the heat pump in it, had air handling, and whatever else they needed, and hot water heater. And so they cut a hole in the roof and they put this thing in there.
Mm-hmm.
And it came with like basically a big diaper that would lay out over the existing roof. And they'd be in and out of there in half a day. And there was a video on it.
Yeah.
So it can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, this country's not been thinking in those terms yet.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to be able to tell people they have to spend $20,000 on their house. That's just not going to happen.
No.
And see you, Morgan.
Yeah. Zuleika, I'm just to be clear, kind of reading through this. So what the chart is still that's still what we saw, right? From October of 2022.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of just the additional kind of here's thoughts next. What is Jeff and Heidi's kind of target next? What would be helpful for, what are the kind of areas where you're focusing? Sounds like, certainly on the residential side with the home energy score, on the commercial side as well, or has the focus been really starting with residential benchmarking, or
no,
kind of where in this chart would be helpful for us to kind of focus?
Right. Well, 2023.
Right. Yeah.
you know, we don't really want to move forward with a lot of these bigger pieces until the town is behind it, you know? That we're really moving in this direction and using this as kind of our guiding path. I guess what if, you know, our concern is that it's not possible, right? And so do we need to adjust it to be more realistic? Or do we keep the aspirational, knowing that maybe we're going to fall short, but that this is where we're heading? You know, that's kind of where the questions that we have. It's not so much about the certain pieces, unless people have opinions about the certain pieces, which would be great. But just more like, how does it look overall? We're trying to get to net zero. How do we do that with existing buildings? Does this make sense?
Mhm.
Would the e-board, if somebody was like, yeah, I scored a 3 and I want to sell my house and I have to upgrade it to a 5 in order to sell my house, like, you know, can you defend that? You know, like those
The
kinds of
equity
things.
piece is a real challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the financial and the equity
Yeah.
piece is a real,
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
how to really address that.
Right. Because we don't have
Adequately.
extra rebates. We don't have a bunch of money that we can help. I don't think the town does. So, you
Nor
know,
do a lot of homeowners.
Right.
So
Yeah,
everybody's in the same
exactly,
boat of like, this is
exactly.
a goal, but
Yeah.
how do we get here in a way that's
Yeah.
prudent
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
Quinn.
I was gonna say, I lived in Portland and had those guys come out and
Oh.
assess my house and the report was really focused on how can we save you money, right? It was,
Yeah.
you know, here's all the things you could improve.
Yeah.
Here's how long it would take you to like, you know, like to me, everybody's so focused on getting your windows upgraded and it turns out attic insulation is like
Mm.
the number one,
Yeah.
not that expensive, a huge difference.
Mhm.
And so maybe everybody can't get rid of their gas boilers or whatever, but they can use less
Yeah.
gas because their other things are improved.
Yeah.
So I thought it was a cool report and I'll see if I can find it, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's a really useful, we like the report a lot. It is really useful. And that's often how you need to frame these things, especially for people who like don't believe in climate change or whatever, right? Is like, well, this is just to help you save money. That's what we're doing. That was the point of this, is to help you save money. And you don't even have to talk about energy efficiency necessarily. But you know, it's a big lift and we're already halfway through 2023. Not that actually everything on here for 2023 we could do this year, no problem. But you know, we just want to sort of like have that blessing or like, you know, be able, when we talk to the Board of Trustees, be able to, you know, talk about some concerns that the e-board has, or, you know, whatever, like we're just trying, because it feels like even if we try really hard, we're probably going to fall a little short on this.
Yeah. My thinking is that it's worthwhile to have this be aspirational and
Yeah.
it communicates the kind of importance
Mm.
and kind of urgency and
Mm.
striving toward that seems important.
Mm.
For existing buildings, it's gonna be slow iterative steps to do it
Yeah.
and putting it out if it, you know, especially from if you think, well, this is something that I need to address in 5 years, it's not really on my radar right now. If it's something I think, oh, I need to try to do this in next year, but
Yeah.
you know, I do think it's helpful to have this be a kind of keep the pressure, but also the kind of like it present in
Mhm.
terms of people's minds, this is happening.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
would
that's
be
kind
my
of how we
feedback.
feel in general too, right? It's like, well, we got to try.
Yeah. Right.
Any other thoughts from people about?
I put together a chart, which
Mhm.
came out in your emails.
Yeah.
That has a schedule called the greenhouse gas reduction schedule. I just took a stab at it one day. And there's 7 years that we have to work with. I'm using June to June
Mhm.
as a year. So
Mhm.
we're now in the first month of the current work year.
Right.
Okay. We have X number of metric tons of CO2 to
Mhm.
hit our goal. So we have to take so much per month.
Mhm.
So I said, let's start easy. Let's start with 5%. 5% bite between now and June of next year.
Mhm.
10% the next year. By this time, we're gonna start figuring out how to get these things done, right?
Right.
What could we do right away? We could put heat pumps in this room.
Mhm.
We can do it within a month if we wanted to. We can get a guy out here, say, okay, make them this big, that's good. I won't go into the details, but you could do that. You can also set up a system where you're looking at people who have to replace their heating equipment.
Mhm.
And that happens, you know. And if we get in touch with the suppliers, equipment suppliers and the subcontractors in the valley and so on and so forth. And we work with them and say, look, you get a replacement job. Let's talk about putting a heat pump in instead of the old gas boiler. Right?
Mm.
Now, that's happening anyway, in some
Mhm.
cases,
Mhm.
like the guy who was in here and talked about what he did for his house, John, at the last meeting.
So Pat,
And-
just to be clear, and just from a time standpoint, are you suggesting putting CO2 equivalent to this list? Is that your recommendation, or you're just saying, you're just kind of communicating that there's kind of the urgency of the CO2 equivalent based on the 2030 deadline?
Right, right.
Okay,
Yeah. So we've never taken a real bite at this in terms of how much can we get done? When should we get it done? You know, that kind of thing. It's never been done. So here's a, you know, I just threw this together. You want different numbers on there? Fine. You know,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
change the numbers as you go along. Fine.
Yeah.
But at least you've got a target. Now
Mhm.
you can go to the board of trustees, says, look, we got this thing. We think this will work. It will get us where we want to go. We just have to figure out the pieces and how we're going to do it as we go along.
Mhm.
And there's examples out there and people are doing it. I think we can do it. And, but it means that we, you know, that we have to get the board of trustees to commit to reaching these goals.
Yeah.
So I'd love to go to the meeting with you
on the
guys
same
to go
page.
when you go to the board of trustees.
Yeah.
Or maybe wiser if I didn't go, but you know, whatever.
yeah, on the same page with your efforts. For
Yeah.
sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, thanks, Suleika. for
Yeah.
this. That's helpful. And you know, certainly building electrification is a topic that we talked about, and it's going to be a focus for our group, and especially the kind of subcommittee that's looking at that. So
Yeah.
we will,
Hey, Zulie,
you
Mhm.
your heart's in the right place. Thank you.
good work.
Go team.
Yeah.
A few just final things before we wrap up. I want to just kind of poll, are people generally available in July for the July meeting? Is anyone not available in the July meeting? Just want to make sure that we kind
is
of
that,
have
the
it's the
Monday of Mountain
third,
Fair, right before Mountain Fair.
I believe it's yeah, it'd be the 17th, so 2 Mondays before Mountain Fair.
Okay.
Jane's not going to be here. July, but not August, but other people will be here. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks for that. And the mobility master plan, there was an ask for, Chris mentioned this briefly, for someone from the e-board to be a part of attending some of those sessions. I put that out to the Climate Action Subcommittee and EV. I know Quinn mentioned that he was potentially interested to do that, but I wanted to just see if there was anybody else who's interested. But that's something that we'd like to get going so that we can have a liaison between e-board and mobility. Are you good to do that, Quinn? Good.
You mean like the
I-
elected officials transportation steering committee or?
Yeah, so Kevin said basically someone who's interested to be a part of the stakeholder and make that maybe meeting with.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Zuleika. Okay. If you're willing, Quinn, to be the point of contact, that would be great. The other thing is that Quinn said, offered in an email, if anybody wanted to do an evening float sometime this summer, that Quinn has also generously offered that if anyone wants to do an
A float?
float, be on the raft, be close to the river. So maybe we can, if any people are interested, we can powwow and try to do that with Quinn.
All right.
But Thanks, everyone.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do we want to make a motion to adjourn? Second, all in favor? Okay.
Aye.
Thanks.
Yeah.